Imperial Zenta here, presenting the MMO primer, and what I'd like to talk about today is a concept called Aggro. Aggro. And Aggro has a bunch of different names depending on the MMO that you play. Some call it threat, so threats, some might call it hate. And what is this? What is this aggro concept? So if we have a mob being one of our bad guys, then what does this mean? Well, it's a decision-making system. Decision-making system. Well, what do you mean if you say, well, it's a decision-making system? So just say I have a mob, and we have our party again. So our party is here. And the question is being raised. We got a question. The question is, well, which one will this mob go for? Will he go up to here? Will he pick party number 1 or player number 2 or player number 3? How is this decision made? So we kind of have to get into the heads of the game designers. So if we were to play game designer ourselves, and we'll call it aggro. So again, I may use these terms interchangeably. I may call it aggro and threat. I know if you've been playing the World of Warcraft game, they call it threat. EQ players back in the EverQuest days, they would call it hate. And let's just make some baselines here. And a baseline I could say is 1 HP damage, DMG damage against mob, so versus mob, equals 1 threat. 1 threat. And also maybe for our healer is 1 HP healed creates 1 threat, or 1 piece of aggro. So let's go back to our party here. So let's just say that this member here fired off an ability and hit the mob 1 HP. Okay, so if that's the only thing that was done, then this mob will turn around and come to this guy and start attacking him. So he'll start hitting him, or if he's a ranged mob, he'll shoot an ability at this person. So that player starts taking damage. So just say number 3, I'll put an H, that's our healer. Number 3 fires off a healing ability. And let's just say that that's at 10 HP. Replenishes him 10 HP. Just say he's getting hit. He did 1 HP of damage. Monster came and hit. Took him down. So if we take our health bar here. Okay, so the monster did 10 HP, and the healer healed back 10 HP. But what if this number 1 player, all they did was 1 point of damage to the mob, and we have this aggro rule. The rule is 1 HP healed creates 1 threat. Well, we just healed with our healer 10 hit points. So what happens is there's a table, and you don't see the table. It's hidden, and people will call this the aggro table. Aggro table. Again, you don't see this. This is a construct within the game, and if we think of it in this type of paradigm as a table, stuff at the top is at the highest, has the highest amount of hate, has the highest amount of threat, and this was player number 1 was at the top of the table because they did 1 HP. Now we have player number 3. All of a sudden they did 10 HP in healing. So what happens is they go to the top of the table. So this is the aggro table for mob number 1, and mob number 1 will then rush down here if it's a melee type mob and start hitting on your healer. So how do we mitigate that? How do we control this? Because this can turn quite chaotic. And there's a term for this. If I go into a little more advanced terminology, we call it a ping pong. Ping pong. So it's ping pong threat, ping pong hate, ping pong aggro, where this mob will just move between these players as they change their standing on the aggro table. Okay. So the party needs to maintain control, and let's just say that the designers of the game, they don't have it out for anybody. Uh, they could say, hey, if I have a healer, then all mobs will kill the healer, and that's just going to be the rule of the game. That would make the game just unplayable if you lose all your support classes, and then it starts to rip through your damage, and then your tanking classes. So here's how the control will work. So just say we take our tank, and we have the mob, and let me do the mob in red. This. Okay, so we have mob number 1, and we have an aggro table. Aggro. And if we look at our rule again, let's take a look at our rule. I gave these rules, but these rules have to flex. If these are the hard done by rules, then you can say, well, wait a minute. We talked about tanking before, and the interesting thing, one of the strengths of the tank is the tank can do mitigation. Mitigation. What does that mean? It can reduce the amount of damage coming in from the mob. So what this could mean is the amount of damage that our tank is taking is going to be reduced. And if the tank didn't have all his defenses, maybe the mob will do 50% of the HP bar in damage, but maybe they're only doing 5%. And if there's another rule here that if damage is mitigated, maybe 1 point mitigation equals maybe 5 points threat. If we design the game with some rules like that, then the tank all of a sudden will take damage, but if he's mitigating damage, he gets higher and higher on this aggro chart. That's what we want. We want the tank to be really high. He doesn't do a lot of DPS, but he gets abilities that increase the amount of threat. So the tank is a hero for creating this threat, getting on top of this chart. So if our healer is going to work and throwing a healing spell, and perhaps for 100 HP, as long as 100 HP, if that generates 100 points, then their threat's going to be lower than perhaps all this. If there was like a 50-point hit coming in to the tank, and the tank mitigated that down to 5 HP, but before the healer needed to heal, just like for 5 HP to occur, you have to think of how many times you have to get hit 20 times for that to occur. And every hit, he's generating this threat. So I know I'm going a bit advanced here for a beginner type course, but we need to take a real good look at threat and see how threat is generated. And by understanding threat, you can then understand, well, if I have my DPS, and I have a DPS sitting here, melee DPS, that's hitting this mob, then at what point, and they're doing huge amounts of damage, maybe like 1000 HP, at what point will they pop up to the top of the table, and all of a sudden he turns around and he starts hitting on the DPS. DPS doesn't have this damage mitigation that a tank does. Now all of a sudden your healer is going to have to, we'll draw our healer heals in green, our healer is going to have to start pouring on and trying to keep this player alive. And this starts creating unbalances in the party. You want to contain control. And the control we want to do with this aggro is we want to make sure that those mobs are hitting against the tank. That means the healer doesn't have to throw as many heals. That means the damage dealers are not getting hit, and they can keep doing damage, and we are going to knock out the mob. He's going to be KO if we keep this system going. So think of this as a system in the party, and we always want to maintain the tank at the top of the aggro table by him using his abilities that generate a huge amount of aggro, and then having the other players using their abilities that are mitigating or reducing their threat, or not using high threat attacks, and managing their aggro. And that's going to be a topic for another video. I'll talk about aggro management techniques.